First of all, there's a lot of confusion about the term objectivity. A lot of people don't understand its history and what it means. It did not come from lawyers, as I've heard some people say. It does not mean both sidism. It does not mean false balance. It does not mean political stenography. It does not even mean neutrality. Okay, here's a book about historiography.
He's bringing the receipts.
It's not neutrality. I brought the visual aids. The term objectivity came into use in journalism in the early 20th century at a time not unlike the one we're in now, where monarchical government was collapsing worldwide after World War I. The Russian Revolution had happened, and it was not clear to people whether democracy would, as an institution, was going to survive, or whether some new form of government on the left and the right, which was either fascism or communism, would instead. And there was a very famous critique of the coverage of the New York Times by Walter Lippmann and Charles Murs, 45 pages in the Atlantic magazine, in which they talked about confirmation bias. They didn't use the term default culture, but they could have in this piece, and talked about all the things that were wrong with the coverage of the New York Times of the Russian Revolution based on the cultural limitations of that newsroom. And they picked the best newsroom that they could find in the country. You have to remember, this is a point at which a lot of journalism was still kind of rising out of partisanship. What they meant from objectivity, and they took this term from German social science, and what they meant, and Lippmann even talks about that, he's calling for a more scientific spirit in journalism, meaning more transparency, more rigor, more discipline, show how you do your work. It did not mean neutrality. We have lost a lot of that meaning in the way people think about it. But if people, and there are a lot of reasons for that. There is a deep streak of anti-intellectualism in journalism. There's a kind of an apprenticeship model, a craft mentality, just do what your city editor told you to do. These were not college-educated people in journalism to a large degree. And but if people think that objectivity, that the opposite of objectivity is subjectivity, or that objectivity means I have no point of view, I'm a cipher, I am neutral, that's a misunderstanding of it.
Can we actually
best
pause?
Of our journalism is journalism that is so deeply reported that it has a point of view. Let me just make one other point and then I'll stop. A lot of people know the term the view from nowhere, which Jay Rosen has popularized to denigrate this kind of simplistic notion of objectivity, as objectivity is lack of consciousness. The term actually comes from a book of philosophy by a guy named Tom Nagel, and it is meant to say that the way you achieve an objective method of understanding the world, objective method, is by starting with your own, what he calls initial point of view, recognizing what that is, and broadening out from there to understand the points of view of people who see the world differently. He's a philosopher, not a journalist. But rather than the denial of one's point of view, it is a recognition as simply an initial point of view. And I'll just finish by saying, what worries me with the term moral clarity, if we decide let's adopt moral clarity as our goal instead of objectivity, first, we don't understand objectivity. We should understand objectivity properly. Second, if that's a crummy term because it's confusing, moral clarity may be worse, because the Proud Boys have moral clarity. Nazis have moral clarity. White supremacists have moral clarity. It does not imply anything about a discipline of verification and deep rigor and open-mindedness and inquiry, which is what I think journalism needs to aspire to. I'll stop.